Welcome to Happily Ever Aftermath,
the podcast where we discuss relationships in movies and our relationships with them.
I'm Polina Grinbaum.
And I'm Diana Rojek-Sconard.
Hi, this is Polina.
This is Diana.
And we're here for part 486 of Polina Was a Really Pretentious Teenager, or we're going to talk about the film Gothic, 1987's Gothic, or 1986, sorry.
That's what I have in my notes.
And it's like, it says release date 87, and then it says 86. Teenager. Oh, do you? That's only appropriate. That was my first thought.
No, you did good.
This is not, I think this was a cult favorite, but I don't even know if it's a cult favorite.
Emphasis on the cult.
It's somewhere, it's culty. It's actually a Ken Russell film, so, you know.
Not to be confused with Kurt Russell.
No, who I accidentally kept confusing it with earlier before we started taping, but.
In names only.
Yeah. It was, I'll give a quick synopsis because there's not a lot of plot in this movie. Basically, it's 1816, and at the extremely large and Baroque, I guess Gothic, probably more than Baroque, a lakeside chateau of Lord Byron, who is in this case played by Gabriel Byrne.
Yep.
Yeah. A poet, Byron. And Percy Shelley, who is played by Julian Sands, who clearly I had a thing for when I was a teenager, because this is the second Julian Sands film that we've chosen.
Okay.
And his fiancée, Mary Wollstonecraft, who will later be Mary Shelley.
Natasha Richardson.
Natasha Richardson.
May she rest in peace.
I know. That's a horrible way to die. That's a very sad thing. I totally forgot about that.
I'm sorry.
Until last night I was watching it and that came up too. I'm like, oh. Okay. And her half sister, her name is Clara, played by a woman named Myriam Cyr. Or Sir, I don't really know. I can't remember. I'm sorry. And his private doctor, and his private doctor, John Polidori, who's played by Timothy Spall, very, very, very creepy and anxious guy. They spend the evening sharing ghost stories while under the influence of experimental compounds provided by the doctor. As the night goes on, reality and horrific tales begin to commingle. This is from the IMDb article. So basically, they get really stoned. They scare themselves on laudanum. They scare themselves silly, and they run around kind of living out their horrors and making up ghost stories. Now, supposedly, this is a reenactment of the night that... Not supposedly. This is a reenactment of the night that that inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein.
And also a different book came from that, The Vampire.
Yes. So yeah, this was
story.
Yeah. So this was this whole weekend. They basically that's the game that they played is or this whole time that they stayed with Shelley and Byron were really close. That they stayed there. They kept daring each other basically to write, better and better ghost stories.
And what's really strange is that when I watched this movie, I read the synopsis and then I watched the movie. I was having a really hard time following the dialogue.
I was too.
I was just like,
I had to turn on the
supposed to be
closed caption?
Oh, that I should have done that. Damn it. Okay. No, it just didn't occur to me that in my head it's like an episode of some, whatever. Gentlemen, I'd challenge you to make over this, okay.
It's sort of, it's like, I don't know. Yeah, like a reality show.
Something like that. I expected it to be a little bit less crazy ass, but
it was crazy ass. So I am a little, I have a lot of, I don't know, I guess a little shame. And I feel like I'm starting to torture Diana. So when I will talk about my experience with this film very quickly. So I watched this, I think I was around probably 15, 16, when we, a friend of mine who lived near me, we would hang out at his house all the time and watch this movie.
Oh, okay, so
over and over again. And I don't know if I had a copy. I might have, but he definitely had a copy. And his name was Rusty. So Rusty, if you're listening to this, hello.
Great job, Russ.
Yeah. He was a really interesting character. And I think why he got me into this film, and he one of the things I think that made it really interesting was this was a lot of these ideas that we were sort of obsessed with at the time.
16-year-old Polina?
16-year-old Polina, probably 16. I think it started at 15, but 16-year-old Polina, we're sort of, we're like the weird, we weren't quite goth. I guess he was a little more goth than I was, but we were, I don't know, artsy, or thought of ourselves as artsy, I guess. And so this idea of this decadent party. So my memory of this movie, I just want to say, is I know that it was, I forgot how much of a horror film this was.
Okay.
So, because I know that you're expecting us to talk about romantic movies, and this horror film kind of threw a wrench in the works. There's a wrench in that works. But the way I remember this movie, oddly, in watching it over and over again, it made me realize I may not have actually watched it all the way through more than once. Because I think when my friend and I watched it, we probably would kind of re-edit the movie for the things we were into. Because it was much... I'm not a big horror person. In fact, I never go to horror movies. Horror movies scare me. I mean, I went to Get Out.
Oh, which
is an amazing movie.
I probably said this in the past. Get Out is to horror as La La Land is a musical.
Yeah.
It's there. It has all the elements, but it's not traditional. See Get Out, people.
Yeah.
If you haven't.
Which, I mean, we're not the only people.
Months and months and months and months later. Well, if you're not on this wagon already, get on the Get Out wagon.
Yeah, if you're not on this wagon, you're kind of being
Get
silly.
Out wagon.
Yeah, you're wasting your time. You, in fact, do not feel at the end of this podcast like you should go out and see Gothic.
Go see Get Out.
Go see Get Out. Just do it.
That movie's romantic.
It's kind of romantic in the same way Gothic is.
It's romantic until it's not.
Yeah.
Back to
Gothic. Gothic. So yeah, Gothic, I think... God, I just rewatching this was sort of cringeworthy. First off, okay, let me set the scene of me rewatching this. So I watched this right after we had an all-day this work picnic that my company had, and been sort of like day drinking, hanging out.
This is rewatching. This is not 16-year-old Polina.
This is not 16-year-old Polina, because 16-year-old Polina did not work in a place that would let you drink. Would have a big picnic.
I don't know, different experiences for different people.
Yes.
16-year-old. You're 16 years old. You cracked a cold one after a long day at the office.
Sometimes, that's the only thing that works.
So adult Polina rewatching.
So adult Polina rewatches it on a very foggy, windy night in San Francisco. A windy, foggy summer night, much like this movie, and was like, this movie is terrible. Like I first started, I was like, I was still a little drunk. I was a little stoned, I have to admit. And I'm like,
we just earned our first E rating.
Yes, exactly.
E, not for everyone.
Yep. I live in California. It's legal. The acting, the beginning, the script is so stilted and so like pretentious and strange.
You're saying the acting is stilted, pretentious, and strange.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I considered the characters themselves. I thought it was part of it. I thought the strangeness was not part of the acting, but it was the characters themselves.
I think especially Gabriel Byrne is... Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I feel like the writing maybe is what's stilted and strange.
No, I think they did an excellent job portraying the... I don't want to use the inappropriate words, the insanity of the evening.
Yes.
The acting of the... Okay. I have to speak very carefully because the actual characters, just I had a hard time following the motivations specifically. But if their motivations were, I am out of my mind and on this substance. And
I had to remind myself the entire time that they were high.
Well, that wasn't explicit.
Well, they were dreaming. They came to dinner and they poured laudanum into the glasses.
Okay, as the resident prude of the podcast, what's that?
You know, it's actually not a drug I think you can get anymore, but I think it was probably like, I think it was opium. It was basically like liquid opium.
Okay.
I should really look this up, but regardless, it was like a strong hallucinogenic.
Okay. Did not know that.
Yeah, that helps with the movie. I feel like actually a lot of things help in watching this movie that I kind of thought about this morning.
Like closed captioning for me.
Closed captioning,
I swear,
changed the whole game for me.
I swear, I'm like, so did he just say he's drinking red wine vinegar? Yeah, that's good. I like red wine vinegar on my salad.
Yeah, I kept trying to watch it without, because I'm like, I don't want such an old lady, and it's distracting. And
well, they're also British.
Yeah, they were like mumbling. I mean, just whatever, it wasn't good. But anyway, I was just like, this is horrifying. It's funny because watching it again, I was like, I don't remember this movie being this disturbing.
When was the last time you saw it?
Like probably at 17 or 18, maybe.
Okay.
Which is a long time ago. For me.
Okay. We're not old.
I'm not old at all. So that, and then I had to say I had a really, really hard time watching it, thinking I'm like, oh my God, what am I subjecting Diana to? Like, I couldn't stop doing it. And usually, what I usually do for this podcast is I'll watch something twice, at least. And sometimes I admit the second time is sort of as I'm walking around with my iPad, like, I don't know, doing things or stretching or whatever. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't submit myself to this film twice.
Oh.
I just couldn't. But then I kind of read reviews of it, and I remember that this was considered like a rather not successful monetarily, but sort of a successful art house film.
Art house.
And a really a horror film that was so crazy and so shocking, which is stuff that I was really interested in at the time, or certainly my friend was. I wanted to be interested in shocking people. And I also realized how much of this movie, I think Mary Shelley, the character of Mary Shelley was sort of a great, that probably was how I felt, I always felt like I was the, kind of the slightly more on the outside, prudish one of my friends or the world I wanted to be a part of or something. And so maybe that's what I saw in it. It was also, I remember this movie it is really sensual, and there's a lot of sex in this movie.
Yes, I saw it.
Yeah. But I think that was really titillating too, because it was also one of those movies where the sex wasn't that same it wasn't the same simply they get together and then it just wasn't scripted. And I think it was, to me, as I remember it was more of a film about a more kind of interesting sensuality. And of course, romantic poets, 16, romantic poets are the, 16-year-olds all over the world, read Shelley, they, visit his grave, all that stuff. And I was just so so I remember the movie being a more really about sensuality.
Okay.
Than it was about horror, even though I remember there was a horror component. This movie is really friggin' terrifying and crazy. And I actually thinking and reading about it earlier, I mean, now, like, having, like, now I've had a day to think about it. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. There's a little more to it, especially if you know a bit about Mary Shelley and her life and her past, and a bit about Shelley and Byron, and they do talk about how they were these rock stars of their time. Like the opening scene is them trying to arrive at the chalet.
Mm-hmm. That's right. They had people staring at the house and
from across across the pond, or a lake or whatever it was.
Reminiscent of those Beverly Hills mansion homes of the stars,
exactly,
type of thing. And you look to your left. This is where. Yeah. I don't know who's famous now.
Yeah. I was going to say, it was like nothing comes to mind.
This is where Elvis once decided to spend a weekend.
And they have these, they have binoculars trained, like set up, and they're like, if you dare look in the bedrooms, because, there's all this debauchery happening. And
in that particular instance, just a guy staring out the window.
Yeah, exactly. And he loves it.
No, please scratch yourself right now. It's so not sexy at all. No debauchery. Well, little debauchery.
It gets...
Depends on where he scratches.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like almost like I watched the movie from the lens of like, why did I... First off, why was this like a movie I was super into? And also... What the hell am I putting Diana through? I felt like horrible. And so it kind of, maybe it kept me from getting into the movie.
If I may take the reins for a second.
Please.
We're watching this, we watch these movies, and for the listeners out there, if you're expecting us to be talking about romantic movies, we will have some surprises for you. So good job, Polina, picking the first surprise. Secondly, when I first watching this movie and the interesting imagery and the stripper robots appeared and all the various things happened, I will admit to you wholeheartedly, I'm like, Polina, you got some splaining to do, because
I'll explain.
Just in the basic elements of like, well, these movies, love, romance, relationships. I'm like, no. Okay. That's perfectly fine, because in this instance, we're not seeing a traditional romantic movie, but we're seeing a couple that is having to deal with something you don't really think about when it comes to these movie type things. I watched a movie recently called Man Up, and it's, Simon Pegg and Lake Bell. And there's this whole thing about how there's another couple that, she cheated on him, and that's this, that, and the other. The Shelleys, you don't hear about it too much, but she is the mistress. They talk about how they're open to free love and the relationship stuff. And I'm thinking, no, you don't hear about this kind of thing. Again, it's not what people talk about all the time, but it's there. People have affairs. People leave their wives. People leave their husbands. They, and the relationships are established. And traditionally in movies, villains.
Yes.
They're evil.
Yeah.
Except for, when I know someone in real life who does that, they're fine. Because they're not evil, they just happen to be in a set of circumstances. And so it's just portraying it. And I thought that was really interesting.
That's really interesting.
I thought that
I feel slightly better, because I thought you were going to be like, I didn't sleep for 3 days. Well, that's the thing. So I was saying that now, thinking about the movie, I think that is a really big part of it, which is, I think, why the movie works at all, is that, not only did, I don't know how much you know about Mary Shelley.
Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
I can discuss, like, there are two big things about this particular movie that I was just not looking forward to discussing. Number one being the orgies. And that's to be expected. But number two,
awkward.
Yeah. Number two, more specifically, okay, I can rattle off, this person was in this movie, and oh my God, how can you not know who this person is? Well, that's because that's my brain, that's not your brain. When you suggested this, and I read the synopsis and said it's about Lord Byron, it's about the Shelleys, it's about, oh my God, I have no idea who this person is. I got into my insecurities of, I'm going to be showing all my blind spots of, what did Byron write? What's happening right now? What's a Byronic hero? Did I say that correctly? Frankenstein, yes. Okay, this is the part where I remember everything I read in Frankenstein. I spew that out so I can sound just a little bit intelligent about Gothic literature, and then I step back and pretend that I know what we're talking about right now.
All right, let's make that okay. That's funny that you should mention that, because I had a very similar thing.
Okay.
Because I was like, wait, I'm picking this movie, and I'm basically saying I was super into Shelley, and I was super into Byron, which I don't think I was. I was very into the idea of them.
Did you see
But
this
I did
movie?
read Frankenstein.
Did you
I read him, but I didn't read him.
Did you get into it after you saw this movie?
A little bit. I definitely got into Frankenstein.
That can happen.
I actually always feel a little bit like this podcast. A, I have a terrible memory. B, I was always the one who read the book and never saw the movie. There are so many movies that you mentioned that I never saw.
Mm-hmm. But you understand the story.
Yeah.
So that's what's the problem?
So I know how you feel, because I feel that way a lot. But I'm like, but whatever.
Don't get judgy
What can I
then.
do?
I saw the book. Wait, no, damn it. I read the book. No, that's cool. Cool. So you know what the story is. Great.
Yeah.
No,
But I also there's a lot of movies that I probably should have seen that I never saw.
there's
like
a lot of books
Trading
are
Places.
really well. So you're talking about Trading Places right now. When I'm talking,
I'm actually, but then
First
I
of all,
called it Trading Spaces. So I think doesn't that illustrate my point? I have seen Trading Spaces.
So let me see if I can get this straight. You're thinking that I really need to see Trading Places, and I'm over here like, what's Byron again? Is that like, the two forks in the road guy?
Yeah.
Leaves of grass my ass?
Yeah.
What's happening? I can quote some things thanks to The Simpsons. So
Neither of which are Byron.
that was the joke?
Yeah, I know. That's what I liked.
No.
I wanted to just point that out for us, for listeners.
And I wanted people to know that I did that on purpose. That way that you don't think that I'm a big idiot. All part of my master plan. This is like one of those movies. This is definitely one of those movies where I also feel like, wow, yeah, my knowledge of these people was actually romantic, not just they're romantic poets. Like, I read Shelley, I read some Byron, I definitely read Frankenstein. I read Frankenstein after I saw this movie. Okay, so that's good. Thank you, Ken Russell. It is an excellent book, and everyone should go out and read it. It's so good. Frankenstein.
Oh,
okay.
It's like impossible to put down. So good.
Oh, I feel bad because that was high school assigned reading.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, that would have ruined it for me too.
Well, it didn't ruin it for me. It's just I have very little recollection of it. I think the history of Frankenstein's monster and monster movies ruined Frankenstein for me. You don't get. I think society gets credit for ruining, air quotes right now, ruining.
Well, the fact that we call it Frankenstein as that's
another hipster thing right there. It's Frankenstein's monster.
I
read the book.
And then I'm like, well, we read that too. I also read the book when I was like 17, so I don't remember that much of it anyway. But I read it more recently, or reread it at some point on some vacation like 15 years ago, and it was really good. Yeah.
And just to possibly, if it still existed, to quiet your anxieties. First of all, we subject each other to things.
Good, thank you.
So it's there. So it's there. And I will turn, not that she has, but she got a little bit, closed off and I'm sorry and I'm looking sheepish. I get my turns. I'm so sorry, Polina.
That's true.
I made you watch an ice skating movie and the thing where she went and dressed up and went to England. I have my movies. That's the other thing.
I enjoyed that movie.
See, you enjoy these movies, whereas
I did not enjoy the ice skating movie.
That's okay. Oh, good. Now we're even. Okay, so you didn't enjoy it. Here's what I'm going to say. This movie was not on my top 50 enjoyment movie watching experiences this year. Wait, no. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let me get to my point. The experience was there in that I was very thoughtful about it. So
good.
I watched it with my husband, and he's like, "What is Polina making you watch?" I'm like, no. And the dancing stripper thing. There were some very choice moments.
Oh, that is actually a really good one. I really, really
enjoyed the robotic stripper thing happened, and then he watches me pull my notebook out, and he starts laughing. I'm like, no. don't think that this is one of those funny movie moments where, what I wrote down underneath mechanical stripper was Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, there are tones to this movie. There is a lot happening right now that it's just, I'm not enjoying this movie, but at the same time, I'm very thoughtful about what's happening and the connection with the person who told me that this is what we're watching. Not that you recommended watching it, but we are watching this for this particular,
recommend it. So I'm glad. That makes me feel a ton better.
And then we're going to spend the next 45 minutes making each other feel better about making each other watch these things.
So we're going to stop doing that
now.
We're
going to keep doing it, but go ahead.
When I started watching The Mechanical Stripper, I kept being like, how would they do that then? Like, I literally, it was just ridiculous. I kept tearing it out.
How do they do that?
Yeah. I mean, I know how, but then I was
I don't know how.
I was like, how did they?
I know I can Google it. I'm just.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. It's like you see a player piano, you're like, it just works.
It's magic.
But I was like, okay, so does someone redress? Like, do the servants redress it? Like, this is the problem. I can't. I get into the logistics of all these things and it ruins it for me. So, but I want to go back to one of your earlier points because I think actually, and kind of expand that a little bit, which also is probably one of the things that I really kind of liked or was interested in about this movie.
Tell me.
So Mary Shelley was, her childhood was rather unconventional, and her mother, who actually died very shortly after she was born, was Mary Wollstonecraft, the feminist and writer, and then her father was a political theorist, and that's how she met Shelley. Actually, is because he was a fan of his. I'm gonna get out then because I'm really bad at names. And I think this movie, so she basically espoused, and this entire contingent of people, the culture that she lived in, really espoused the idea of free love, right? And this was actually and this is also a period of time, I'm sort of that I was interested in. I went through a period of being interested in a little bit later, but I think actually kind of spurred by this movie of this whole, there was, in the early 1800s, there was a lot of this, we're going to free ourselves from these shackles of
marriage?
Not of marriage, but of society, that we have this, we can, and also that we can be open with it. And also then, and a lot of it was for feminism. A lot of it was kind of, I don't want to mischaracterize Wollstonecraft because I haven't read her since college. But I think this idea that instead of basically women get chosen and they have to perform all these duties that are really limiting on them, we're going to create a society where, everyone gets to use their best strengths. And they were really trying to free themselves from lots of things. Mm-hmm. And she really believed in free love, but she was having a very, very difficult time. And she did throughout a lot of her life, had a really, really difficult time actually enacting it and dealing with it. And I don't know enough about the thinking of that time period to know if they really had a successful way of dealing with jealousy that wasn't just, the jealousy is just a part of your societal, it's a negative because it's basically you're constrained by society, or you're kind of a bummer. I mean, basically. But because I think now when the people that I know that are into polyamory, there is a lot of talk about jealousy as, it seems as something that is as understandable and acceptable emotion that you will have, and that it is something you will work through, and you will either make rules to make it less of a problem,
or you communicate with your
that it's
many
not
partners.
like, I'm sorry,
or you communicate with your many partners about it.
or your prime partner and your primary partner. And I think that's I think that's what's really interesting is like she is neither a prude nor like Mary Shelley is neither a prude.
Well, she has to.
Nor is she like her stepsister. She's not this like completely venal sexual creature. She's trying to find. Basically, the people around her are defining sort of. She's trying to figure out what does free love mean for herself.
Okay.
Which is something she espoused her whole life, and still had, jealousy. They were trying to have a different kind of marriage.
They are, and what doesn't help.
And they got married like 6 months later.
Or
a year later.
I like your observation is that when it comes to that, and the movie portrayed her as just like, oh, you're all about free love. Well, you want to stop being so uptight about this. And that's, you're right. It's her. I'm having this reaction, a natural reaction of, I'm watching my partner. Granted, we have partners, but they're still bonded in this way, and I'm watching him give himself, be it emotionally, physically, to someone else, be it this companion that we're with, or Lord Byron in the corner, or this random snake that happened to have appeared in this movie.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Random snake. So much randomness in this movie.
Or he's even trying to have sex with the lightning that's coming down from the thunderstorm.
Did you really get that he was trying to have sex? I thought he was just trying to experience the.
No, I was just being overly
stupid
in the whole thing. No, he didn't do anything with the snake either.
No,
I'm just saying. I felt for her. It's very easy to say, yes, be free, but feelings come when you're watching someone spend time or emotions with somebody else.
Yeah, and I think it's like, because it seemed to me, I mean, so basically they had been traveling when this night occurs that is portrayed in this movie Gothic. They had been traveling with her half-sister.
Yep.
For months.
Is it her half-sister or stepsister?
I think it's her.
Oh, the history.
Her half-sister.
Okay.
I think that's what they keep referring to her as.
Okay.
Her half-sister. And again, I mean, you must remember I actually don't remember exactly how the two are related, but
she's a relation.
So they travel together and they've been traveling together for a while too. They've been traveling for several months.
At this point in the history, were they in some version of not exile? Because
they were kind of in some version of exile.
Got it.
Because basically, so Shelley was, when they talk about Shelley being married, he was estranged from his wife. Like they would not. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going on a business trip, and they end up in Switzerland with Lord Byron. It was they were in fact estranged, and God, I really feel like I should have done more homework for this movie, but what I do, So the little that I did, so
not as relevant. But,
and
they're in exile. They're coming to to Lord Byron's,
and
Chateau
they're also recovering from they're also coming from the death of a child.
Oh, right.
And that actually is something else that I had completely forgotten.
I would call that the most horrific part of this movie.
It's the most horrific part of this movie. And I think maybe that's what didn't, like, my 16-year-old brain, like,
you said
I was into the sadness of it. Like, I was really like, oh, that must be, I was into things that were sad, but I was just, I don't know, whatever. When I was 6, my favorite song was this Russian song. I was living in Soviet Union at the time. Was Where Does Childhood Go? and I would walk down the beach. I was 6, and this is a rather famous song at the time, and I would walk down the beach and like sing this song, which my parents found hysterical because they're like, "You're 6. Your childhood did not go anywhere. It is, in fact, happening right now."
Oh, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
I was just like, yeah, I don't know, something about, I was very, I guess I was melancholy. I was very melancholy. I mean, I was energetic, but I read, I don't know, something about melancholia was very appealing to me at the time, like it is to many 16-year-olds, frankly.
Well, yeah.
So I'm not saying, I had unique feelings. In fact, that's probably the most embarrassing thing about this entire podcast is that you go back to a place where you think that where you feel like all of your experiences were so special and so unique, and looking at them from a distance, you're like, oh yeah, that's the other thing that teenagers feel, and that's another thing that teenagers do, and I was kind of just,
Why are we revisiting it?
Special. I don't know.
It sounds
Why
like,
are we doing this?
It sounds like such a good idea at the time, and then you watch it like, and I'm sharing it with people. Are we trying to exorcise some demons?
I think so. I don't think about this. It's funny. I don't feel like my high school years were amazingly happy, and some of them were rather miserable. And maybe
the tide has turned, Polina. If you had a happy high school life, you're just a jerk.
I know, or you're just like, you're vapid, or you're basic. You're basic.
You need to be.
I wasn't basic. That's what I wanted. I just want to tell the world I wasn't basic. I'm
unique.
I used to not be basic. Now I am.
I'm unique. I didn't have a happy high school experience.
Yeah.
Not like everyone else who did, except for me.
Yeah.
But if you did, you're basic.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so psycho. And I felt that way at the time too. Like, all these people are enjoying themselves.
Oh. Yeah. Here is actually
no.
Here's a very important question. You're talking about high school, because I'm going to go back to Byron here.
Yeah, let's go back to Byron.
Here's my first question as I was watching this.
That's much nicer.
I was imagining the people. So this was my observation in this particular instance, and this is what I wrote down in my notebook. Was Byron the first hipster?
There's actually I remember reading a Wired article about hipsters, and he kind of was. I mean, he was, like, people, like, actually the end of the movie is yet another scene of tourism.
Yep.
That, where people go through the house and talk about this night.
Yeah.
And they're all wearing, like, baggy gym shorts, and baggy jean shorts, and they're wearing, ugly basic sneakers, and there's this like very mild mannered tourist guide, and it's like, and everyone's like all excited, and it's like, this is exactly, it's hysterical, of course, because it goes back to that original idea of the romantic poets of, like, they follow their bliss, and they follow their passions, and they try to not, like, at the time, I think that so much of culture, I think so much of culture at the time was really rigid and was really confining. And so I think that there's
we're talking about the time the movie was made, or the time of the period of the movie?
The period of the movie.
The period of the movie.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. 1987. It was also in very excessive time, the 80s. So I think that, and so the fact that you have, first off, Lord Byron's like, he's a lord, and which is really funny because Mary Shelley, like, when she greets him, she literally, like, curtsies and bows and waits for him, and he's like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, you don't have to do that. And which is, I thought was like a really, really fun, I don't know, that moment was really funny for me because I love that idea of, like, well, she's going to this like a debaucherous house. It's like known for its parties and debauchery and madness. And she's like, gotta do a, good girl's curtsy. I just love that. I loved that. And I thought, God, where is it going? But so I think at that time, like, that you not only were going to, not just for a night, and not just behind closed doors, that you were not only going to like give into your passions in a safe way, that you were going to try to basically experience everything, including fear, including, jealousy, including disgust, including anger. You were gonna try to go as far as you could, that emotions are the real truth. And this night, they're so drunk and they unleash their deepest, darkest fears.
I feel bad for Mary Shelley. Well, Mary, not quite Shelley yet, when she started discussing the lost child.
Yeah.
And I was
it suddenly becomes like very real.
It was very real, and everyone else is still tripping out on their high emotions of fear and anguish, and she's having a real deep despair. And I'm just watching this and I'm like,
yeah,
no.
Like, it's a real fear, I guess. Like, I mean, they do make her seem like she's the real
and they made
fear
fun of her for that.
That's
afterwards.
the thing.
And afterwards, I just wanted to go like, I've never had a child, but you will never have a child, so
well, she does actually. She goes on to have a child, but yeah. Oh, yeah, but like, but you're talking to Byron and Shelley.
This is me talking to Byron and Shelley.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to
Oh my God, she wants to bring her dead baby back to life. Ugh. I'm like, may all of you never experience anything besides, I hate you all. I don't know. I don't even know how to curse properly. I can't even curse.
We're too good. We would curtsy.
No, I'm not Lord Byron with my poetic things and my screw you all.
Well, I think that's the other thing. Yeah, because basically, I mean, it's really interesting what happens because they do this seance, right? They're super, super high on laudanum. And they do this seance where they bring basically, so the half-sister's mental. Like, clearly she's not well.
I don't think she was the one that visualized her own naked. Never mind.
Oh, yeah. Half of it, I'm like, what? Well, there's the whole eyes and the breast thing. I cannot, like, that's where I'm like, should have done more research. Maybe, like, if I'd read, like, instead of, just thinking about their lives, I should have read more. But I think that she, like, basically what happened is that the half sister starts to have a seizure, and it turns out that actually she like has had seizures before. Mm-hmm. She clearly is an epileptic or something.
Well, there's definitely something medical happening that they should be a little bit more considerate of.
More considerate of, because but at the time too, I think that epilepsy was still viewed as like
walk it off.
Not walk it off, but it was like your humors were ill-balanced instead of your chemistry. But I don't anyway. Or it was like you're, possessed by the devil. I'm not sure. 1816, I guess that sort of makes more sense. Like, they were still trying to figure these things out.
Well, okay, so
and a doctor was present. I want to say a doctor is present during this whole thing.
Was he an actual medical doctor? Was he not like a doctor?
Well, that's what they started to talk about. No, he was an actual medical doctor, but they talk about whether or not he's a quack or a hanger-on the whole time. Like, they basically make fun of him. And then when he starts to really play with let's put it this way. These people did not create a safe space for everyone to work through their fears.
Well, I don't think that was their intention. I think the whole intention was, hey, we are rich and eccentric and we're creative. Let's get all of these various substances together. Let's have a good time doing it. And if anyone is going to crap on our good time, we're going to make fun of you and your dead baby.
Yeah. Well, and like even the doctor at one point scares Byron because he puts all these leeches in the food. The doctor is the creepy, like, I think basically this is how how you edited the movies.
In my head?
Like, no, but in actual real life, like you would watch them and you would like, okay, I'm going to fast forward through this.
Yeah. I was going to, when you said you only watched certain parts, I was going to ask you, did you do what I did?
I totally did what you did.
So the leeches thing, not so much?
Leeches thing, I think we watched because it was really, really shocking. But I think all the stuff when the doctor, there's a point at which the doctor, things get really, really, really psycho with the doctor.
Are you sure? Are you talking about that scene where he decided to listen to them have some sort of orgy thing? And he decided, for the record, for those of you who haven't paid attention to this movie but have seen it, that's Peter Pettigrew from the Harry Potter movies.
Yes.
And we're not supposed to like him Harry Potter style, but when he did the leeches,
he actually was probably the best. He was a great actor in this movie.
He's very effective.
He was so effective because he was so gross and so creepy. And then also so fucked up, like and
I think it's funny that he decided to do the leeches thing. He freaks I felt sympathy for him
because he actually was playing along. He's like, this is something you're scared of.
Well, no, not even. Okay, so again, captions would have been very helpful. Not the whole we would have been scared of thing. I didn't realize that. It's just like, hey, we're knocking on him, we're scaring him. Hey, we're knocking on you, we're scaring him. All of a sudden, Byron's scared.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
and then he's
far.
Like, yeah, totally. Well, that's what I mean about not creating a safe space. It was basically like, that was kind of the horrible thing. They instead of like, okay, we're going to all play with our worst fears. Cause I think that the Julian Sands character, cause the Julian Sands character, Shelley, played by Julian Sands, he really is like he is really, really committed to, he's really committed to this experience and seeing where it goes. But he is cognizant of the other people some at times, not always. And he's maybe not always, because he's super crazy high, not always as cognizant, but he's not actually cruel. And that's the part I don't remember. Lord Byron is actually cruel because basically he doesn't really, really want his fears to be left out in the open. He wants to take some advantage of the other people.
I have an unfortunate...
Or actually, a lot of advantage.
I have an unfortunate sympathy to what he's doing. He can dish it out, but he can't take it.
Yeah. He can so dish it out.
No wonder I hate him as much as I do.
Well, he's also, in all fairness, a reprehensible character in this movie.
And that's something else that when I wrote down is Byron the first hipster, he's reprehensible. I was explaining to my husband, okay, as a 16-year-old, I can see, because he's got that whole like, yeah, I'm a writer and I'm dangerous and girls flock to me, and the girls do flock to him. And I'm thinking 16-year-olds, I think I can understand why they'd be into it. And Ryan said, well, yeah, look up the Byronic hero. Yeah. And I'm reading examples of Byronic heroes. I'm like, crap, I had a crush on him.
Yep. Oh, totally. He's like the bad boy. But I had a crush on him too at the time.
No, well,
more Shelley.
Well, the exampple that I was reading, okay, so the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock.
Yes.
Oh shoot, there were more, and I had good examples, and I was not ashamed of any of these examples. Hugh Laurie's House, which is basically Sherlock Holmes, but that whole other stuff. And I'm just like, yes, as I was growing older, I realized that I liked all these things because they were brilliant, but they were just impossible to get to type of thing.
Yeah, and if you broke them, I think that was another big fantasy of mine, is to I wanted to be the one who dated the like brilliant guy and kind of broke him, and made him. But like, what did breaking him mean? It meant nothing, really.
It means you.
But I was always dating those weird. Oh, God.
Well, I don't know.
Oh my God.
Breaking is the right word.
Not breaking.
Taming.
Yeah,
taming the wild stallion.
It might be, and I don't know if I was really interested in taming them. Like, I think actually I was more interested.
Was it getting the badge of he stopped for me? He decided that all that he could have, he decided all that he wanted was me? All these women want them, but I want her?
Okay, that is definitely it. All these women want him. I don't really... I'm not one of those. I'm not now. And you've seen my relationship with my husband, and I am not one of those women who likes, to fix men, which is ironic because I just spent 2 hours like being like, hey Diana, you should do these things.
That's just...
now I am bossier, but I think that was never like a fantasy of mine that I wanted. I never wanted to take the Byronic hero and make him put on a suit and go to an insurance job every day. Turn him into a podiatrist, as has shown up many times in these films, like the podiatrist and the accountant.
As I've explained my theory, as I've explained my theory many, many times, the Byronic hero, as we're saying now, the taming of the wild stallion. Now it's the socially awkward one. Now we take the socially awkward and make him socially butterfly. No, not butterfly. It's socially. We got him to open up his wings and fly.
Yeah.
Thanks to me.
Yeah. But I think for me too. I think, and this is not a theory that's gonna like rock anyone's world. But I think I'm looking at this now, and I realize that in a way, those men were doing what I did not have either the guts, or I didn't feel like I had the ability. Like, these men were these heroes. They were allowed to be arrogant without. They were allowed to be arrogant without any consequences.
I'm going to need a little bit more explanation on that, because why do you want to be arrogant?
I don't want to be arrogant. What
did I say? This note that I have here.
Oh, no.
I want to be rich and eccentric.
Yes. Well, that was the other thing. I just wanted to be rich and eccentric.
I want to be rich and eccentric.
So badly. I still really, really wanted to be rich and eccentric.
And I didn't necessarily want, like, again, being arrogant. I wouldn't want to be mean to the servants. Or scoff at the public.
I wouldn't
even give a crap about them. It's like, no, I want to be in this relationship, in this open relationship with my estranged wife over here and my wife over here.
Yep.
And forget all you people. I'm going to go drink some drugs lager.
Laudanum. Lager. Diana, just start with lager, and then we'll move on to laudanum later. That's like a pro tip.
I'm going to drink some lager, and I'm going to play with the snake, and then I'm going to watch some... wait, what? Oh, mechanical stripper.
Well, and then I really, if you notice, there's actually lots and lots of little mechanical bits.
Those
robots,
freaking me out.
Which makes sense, right? The whole oh my god, there's one scene. They have a piano player piano that is played by another one of these robots.
That's the one too. If I don't understand how they work.
Oh yeah,
the player piano, but the robot that plays the player piano.
Yeah.
Who puts the clothes back on the player piano?
I felt so like, why am I overthinking the friggin'? Why am I not just enjoying the? Because basically I'm doing that, and then I'm watching the mechanical stripper.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking all those things, and then they flash back to Shelley, who has discovered this while running around the rooms. They start playing hide and seek, and he starts running around the rooms, and he's so delighted, and I'm like, oh my god, what is wrong with me? Like, why am I not just delighted? Why am I just trying to like tear this apart? But going back to that thing that you asked me to talk more about, I
know, I think we covered it. No, you didn't mean the arrogance of that. You just wanted the freedom that they're rich, their money and their ability to experience things without worrying about the judgments of others
and consequences.
That's not arrogance.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I'm glad that you asked that, because it wasn't that I wanted to be arrogant. I don't think I was like, I want to be Lord Byron, except I'd like really like disclose.
They have like an earned protection.
That's what it is. Okay. And also, I think like I wanted to be able to kind of be creative without fear.
Okay.
I think really that's what it comes down to. I want to be creative without the voice in my head that says, this is going to displease someone. what will my parents think? This is not appropriate for a girl. This isn't appropriate for someone in your station. The ability to like just put yourself out there without apology and without any self-consciousness. Like, and I think actually that's when you think about it, like Mary's, like Shelley character is also kind of wanting a lot of those things. And I think she, and that, I think that's what I was actually, the ability to be fully creative and brilliant without, it represents, like, the freedom, it's actually not just society and how they'll receive your work or perceive you or perceive your work, because, but actually that it's also the inner critic that I wanted to be free of. And also I think I felt a lot of pressure at the time. I mean, it was sort of at that time when, you know, your parents are like, okay, you know, what college are you going to go to? What these grades, what do they mean? And my school was very focused on that type of thing. I mean, well, they should be, right? It's high school. And it was very, you know, there was so much thought about what activities you were a part of. Were they going to show up on your college transcript? I remember that pressure now. It was not nearly as competitive as it is now. And I feel I had that pressure then in the late 80s. And I really, really, really feel very sorry for teenagers today, because I think the pressure is so much bigger. It's like, of course, my parents were scared about the outlay. It was very anxiety producing, the outlay of money it would take to go to college. And they were really, really committed, thank you, Mom and Dad, to making sure that I was not saddled with, that I didn't have to work absolutely full time while I was going. I could go, you know, they wanted me to do that. They felt it was important. And also they wanted me to, but so they were nervous about that. They didn't want me to waste that money, but it wasn't the same kind of money that it is now. It's just, even private schools didn't cost as much. But anyway, I felt this pressure. So that's a digression. I felt like this, I mean, I was still in that thing of trying to figure out what, like, kind of people wanted of me. And I felt like, so much responsibility to my parents. And yet, like, I was kind of like, I was mad at them for even making me feel like I had some responsibility to them. I mean, all this stuff that, like, I think about now where I'm like, oh, it's so sorry. It's like sometimes I'll be walking down the street and I'm like, I'll still be like, Mom, Dad, I'm really sorry. It's so awful. But you know, instead of viewing it as like, oh, here are people who really cared about me, I felt so much pressure. And you know, I was trying to move away from them. And they, of course, were having a very difficult time, because the idea of like a teenager in the US and the idea of a teenager in the Soviet Union is very different. And to be frank, they also like dragged me to museums and dragged me to crazy ballets and like put all this crazy ideas into my head in the first place. So, and then they just want me to like go and, you know, have a regular job. And I was also studying, I wanted to go into theater at the time, and my parents were actually extremely supportive and practical, and were not like, this is crazy. They're like, okay, but then what do you need to know to do this for a real living? Like they really, their thoughts were not like, this is, once they realized it's something I wanted to do. And the thing I wanted to be was a theater director. So it wasn't even like thing.
And is that what spoke to you about this particular movie, watching Byron and Shelley just being able to be their creative selves without the pressures of college grades? Instead, well, to be fair, how old were they? in this particular.
He's.
I mean, the ages don't translate. But,
Yeah, they don't.
But if
they were still fairly
young at the time,
but they weren't. I mean, but they didn't. I mean, Byron. In fact, Byron. I mean, Shelley. They did not have a lot of money. In fact, they. I think after this trip,
they
the
had
Shelleys,
problems, yeah,
they had a lot of financial problems. So that I think was the other probably thing that I didn't see is that Mary was, I think Shelley less so, but Mary was like very conscious of the fact that she was a guest.
Oh, I see.
I think like I saw that more than like, okay, I like this guy has dominion. Like, because at one point they're like, let's go. And there's this crazy storm. Yeah. Like they were supposedly they were actually going to do all these activities. Also, I think the aesthetic of the film really appealed to me. Like we used to, there's a cemetery near my house that was really, that my friend Rusty and I would go to all the time because it was this really spooky seminary, and so you could go and there's this like old, really old cemetery with like crumbling. I mean, it was very looked very. It was a Gothic building. I mean, it was just like it was very much. So that kind of aesthetic also appealed to me. So that's anyway.
That's good. Well, speaking of the aesthetic. The music was it spoke to me.
It's Thomas Dolby.
I know, and I read that, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of amazing. And I had, well, you hear Dolby, is that the Dolby, like the Dolby Theater? Like, well, no, that's unrelated. No, he's just a musician.
Yeah, Thomas Dolby. He was really huge then too.
Yeah,
and I actually like the music felt it was funny. I felt like. Sometimes the music just felt really off to me. Like it wasn't quite right, but the actual music itself was really good. I just felt like it was mixed funny or something. Like something was off there.
There was something off. But when it was over the credits, I'm just like, wow, that's really good.
Yeah, you should look him up. He is really, really good. I sometimes like dig out his stuff. He did Blinding Me with Science.
Yeah, and I made the unfortunate joke to my husband, so he blinded me with Byron.
Oh, that's a really good one. Actually. It's not too bad.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah.
It's a little dad jokey, but than you usually do. But I'm going to give it to you. It's a good joke.
I'm dad joke central.
Hi, that was a good joke.
Oh, I thank you. I accept your thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. So I don't know.
I mean, we can't go over the typical questions because this is an established relationship. Yeah. There is it's just an evening. No. You don't see a progression.
And plus it's an actual fact. Like you do know what happens to them. And they do get married, actually.
They do. They actually do successfully have a child together, historically speaking. But no, I was just thinking a lot of the movies we do watch, it does take place over a weekend and they fall in love over the course of the weekend. But this is an evening, but this is just an evening where...
God, I didn't even think about that. Those questions don't apply at all.
It's not that they don't apply. It's just we can apply them. They just won't get answered adequately.
Yeah.
And if anything, that shows bad judgment on the other movies where it's just like they fell in love over the course of a night.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot can happen overnight, but there's so much established within their relationships. It's just strengthening what's already existed.
Yeah. Yeah, or kind of messing with it. Like, I think with her, like, I think she's starting to see, like, they've been traveling together for months. And so, and at some point Mary realizes she's like, wait, I want you to pay attention to me. But he ends up, like both she and Claire are both really, really scared and are both going through something really intense. And one minute he's trying to help her, but then he hears like Claire screaming. So then he goes to Claire and then he goes back. And I think it's like, she's like, wait, actually this bothers, I'm not as cool with this as I thought I was because I need you right now.
Yeah.
And she knows that also, so does Claire. And he is, I mean, he's sort of like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, I will take care of you right now, too. Like, you're right. But it's, so it's hard. So there's something that happens between them in this movie. And also, I think in a weird way, she realizes that maybe and this is actually something I feel very familiar with, that there's, that that though he's very sad about the son, like it was clearly that they experienced it very differently.
Oh, of course.
And that is a very lonely feeling.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. And I think of all the things that we watched in this movie, me watching it for the first time, the biggest problem, quote unquote, I had about it was they seemed to be very well rested the next day.
I was totally thinking that. Oh my God, the next day. Because I was like, I remember that there's a scene the next day. And maybe this excuses I felt like rather flippant. Like, I don't think I realized how much like Byron messed with Claire and with the doctor, like really, really, really cruel stuff. Like, or I think of course I realized, I don't want to say I didn't realize it. I just think in a way, my edit of the movie, my mental edit ignored that, or rather just clearly didn't pick up on it. But now I feel better talking to you about it, actually. It's just been very healing. Because I was like, what? Oh my God, I was such a sociopath because I'm like, this movie is actually about some really deep, dark stuff. And I was like, it was sexy. And they were so free. And there's Julian Sands like being naked again. So I was like, I love this. Anyway, but I think I was like, oh, it's cool. So you can do this. And then the next day you can have a picnic.
The end.
Yeah.
Well, let's make it a little bit more
actually, the end is when
let's make it a little bit more realistic then. Let's say that was, they slept off an entire 24 hours and then that was the next day.
Yeah. Because remember when she wakes up, they had actually been clearly sitting there like for a while. And I think, like they had clearly been having the picnic for a while. So yeah.
Let's go with that then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it felt a little cheesy at the end.
Yeah.
You know what? After what we just experienced, I think I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
And then credits.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's funny because actually when I was reading about this, she describes it later that basically, and this actually makes me really like her and want to really run out and reread Frankenstein, is that she talks about how basically, this is one night. And there was one night that really crystallized it for her. Okay. But she said that basically they decided that first night that they were going to find like the perfect ghost story hadn't been told before. Mm-hmm. And that so the perfect ghost story that they never told before. And basically every morning it was killing her. She felt so much pressure. She just she's like, but I want to come up with the best one. And every day she'd be like, kind of dreading going out to breakfast and being like, no, I still don't have one. And that actually other people felt that way too, which I think was, I think that was actually really, I just thought that was really a great kind of example of the creative process. That wasn't just like, oh, the first night, because it wasn't the first night that they arrived, the way this movie makes it seem. It was like she'd been there for a while and then they had this really, really crazy night.
Mm. Well, that's unfortunate peer pressure. Did you write the perfect ghost story yet?
Yeah. No.
Come back when you did.
But I think they all felt that pressure.
Oh. Well,
because actually, I don't know if... Anyway, that's all I got.
Oh, okay. Well, not a traditional love story.
Not at all.
But still impactful nonetheless.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. This is a weird movie.
And very... I mean, just seeing the tourist in there, I want to say there was high-waisted pants.
Oh, there was some high, yeah. There was some acid-washed, high-waisted, pleated pants in the last scene. So if you're into that, fast forward until the last minute and a half of the movie.
Mm-hmm. That's an idea as well.
Yeah, but if you're going to watch this movie, you have to give yourself into its weirdness.
No, just go see Get Out.
Or go see Get Out. Or just, read Frankenstein, because... It's great.
And see the aftermath of that particular evening, or read the aftermath of that evening instead.
Yeah. But lots of people love this movie.
There you go.
Anyway. Okay.
There you have it.
Till the next time.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Hey, Polina and I would love to hear from you. Tweet us at HEAMcast or email us at contact@heamcast.com. Thanks for listening.